If you're Liverpool coming into a big game against Pep Guardiola and Man City, a side who've been in great form and have been on a fantastic winning run, what do? How do you set up? Who do you put out there? Which system do you rely on the most? And how much are you playing on the very edge of luck sometimes? Welcome back to the Lawrence McKenna channel. It's good to have you guys. I want to talk about the entirety of this Liverpool team, the way that City choose to try to break them down, but also just the matchups out there on the field, how it worked out in the end, and really, who was the winner at the Etihad? By the way, it was a 1-1 draw. If you haven't already subscribed, yeah, feel free to, but you don't need to, it's all right. Anyway, at the end of that game, it was actually fairly even between these two sides, and I get it, like there were some massive individual matchups, which means that eye test-wise, you're probably thinking that City were the more dominant team. You saw Doku a number of times try and go past Trent, although we'll get into that in a second. You saw that there were a number of times where Mo Salah had plenty of space to run into, but it was more tricky in those tight spaces. And broadly, you'd have said that City, eye test-wise, looked like the more dominant side, looked like the more confident side, looked like the side in the ascendancy. That's partially because they started with, well, I would say their best lineup at the back overall, at the moment at least. Kyle Walker, obviously, he's pretty much given now for City, though I think he will be one of the next big upgrades. Ruben Diaz, Nathan Ake, and Akanji, with Akanji slipping into that midfield, and at the same time, we'll get into the average positions in a little while. Having Rodri back has really, it's just solidified City again. It's given them this basis to build this 4, and this 4 was what was key in this game for City, not necessarily Erling Haaland, weirdly. And then to counteract that, you've got to say, what are Liverpool to do? Like, especially if you look at the difference between the two back fours, right? And you look at the big performances against City today in particular, the real performances came from the front line, the release on the relief areas, but also a couple of times where Liverpool were just able to lock those other players down. And basically through, it wasn't particularly one guy, through the mass of players that Liverpool had, they managed to fumble through the game. I get it. Like, I know a lot of people said, Liverpool have actually been fairly equal with City here. I get it. I think the thing that I'm probably judging Liverpool on at this point is this what they actually wanted to achieve? I know they got the result, like in terms of an away draw against City, so you stay level with them, but how much more could this side have achieved on the day? Before they went into the game, remember, they got a couple of people returning from Brazil. Alisson, McAllister returning from South America, Darwin Núñez as well, and then a couple of other players who've had fantastic international breaks. Of course, City similarly also had a few people returning from international duty and a couple of people who were probably questionable in that time. So you can't really use that as an argument, though you would say that it looked in particular as if Alisson was struggling, maybe not for concentration, but just execution out there on the field. And Liverpool kind of played him into danger a couple of times. More on that in a while. Anyway, a lot of this game featured in, this area of the field. You had Doku coming down this side. Trent's average position was actually more like here, though very often the reason it was dragged back to there was because of Doku, right? And then very often Matip was almost immediately behind that. You almost had another midfielder just there. So you basically had a bank of like 3 just trying to get Doku away. And then what City were trying to do to bolster that on the other side was bring in someone like Bernardo Silva, someone incredibly silky in the touch, someone who could distract and be a certain type of gravity that would drag Liverpool players towards him and basically evacuate a lot of that space in the Liverpool midfield, that when Liverpool leave that space, that can be exploited. Similarly, Jeremy Doku running down that side of the field just stretches Liverpool out, pulls Liverpool's midfield over and makes it difficult. That's not exactly where the goal came from, actually, but we'll talk about the goal in a second. Let's actually talk about Liverpool's average positions. Now, what was interesting was, if you look at the first half compared to the second, this is way more progressed, right? Even then, it's really not that progressed. Before, Núñez was more like here, Salah, I think, was more like here, and the line that Liverpool drew was like that, right? Obviously, as Liverpool managed to play their way into the game, Darwin Núñez became a lot more of an outlet, Salah stretched out onto the field a lot more. And you saw Liverpool playing their way back into it, where they got a foothold in here, and also played a couple of players as a little line back there. You can see how concentrated Liverpool are on defending that side and how confident they are in Virgil van Dijk on this side. Virgil van Dijk, by the way, massively going underrated again in this game. The only time that City really managed to get through was when actually Liverpool were all out of position after a corner. Alisson manages to obviously get the ball out of the box, but it goes too high, not towards Mo Salah, a ball that he's actually really capable of playing and has played many times before. And Liverpool out of position, not handing Haaland off between the two centre-backs. These two are out of position, and suddenly we find Haaland in an easy position to score, right? Haaland wheeling away, Alisson obviously gutted. Alisson got a hand to it. Could he have got a stronger hand to it? I feel like blaming him for that's a little bit weird. City pretty much had this formation and average positions for the whole game. That's a front four. That's basically a 3-3-4. They packed the midfield here, made it really hard for Liverpool to play through. There was nowhere for Szoboszlai anywhere in this area. There's nowhere, literally, he's this wide because he's playing on Mo Salah. And then in this area, you would have said Liverpool were trying to exploit it, but they really couldn't. And actually, there were times when McAllister was coming over to be support to Szoboszlai. Jones was coming over to be to support to Szoboszlai or McAllister. And Liverpool just weren't able to hook up those passes in the midfield and get out of the midfield and into Salah, into the right areas. And what that gave City time to do is every time Liverpool were slow to get it through the midfield, City could just bring these guys back and basically snuff out any attack. It gave them time to stick with Darwin Núñez. Núñez never really got the time until later on to get onto the back of these guys' shoulders. He was very often, very much just in front of them there. And so it just gave them the opportunity to just pick him off every time. How did Liverpool change that? How has Jurgen Klopp kept faith in the system that he's had for quite some time and also the strength that he has off his bench? Well, Liverpool are often looking to play just into what I think are known as areas 17 and 18 or 18 and 19, I can't remember off the top of my head. These areas where Liverpool can either receive and then play on, so the ball goes in here and then goes out there, on and then there, yeah, or there. Or they'll receive it there, but they'll be running onto it from these kind of positions. So actually, they will receive it there, but they'll have run from here. Where did Trent receive the ball? That's right, exactly in this area. Why could he receive the ball? Because the other two midfielders, if you look back at the goal, had evacuated that area, pushed City back and back and back, giving Liverpool an opportunity to get players into this area and therefore score a goal. Who was looking for that space? That's right, Mo Salah, someone who pulled out even more wide, couldn't get the ball into Darwin Núñez, and so was able to play it back towards Trent. Trent gets the goal. I think that's where Liverpool's observations and where Jurgen Klopp has made adjustments this season with Liverpool have made a real difference. In previous seasons, the adjustments felt a lot more obvious, or at least a lot more heavy-handed in some of these games, making it a little bit more difficult for Liverpool to adapt on the fly under Jurgen. In this midfield, you have 2/3, really 4, that is a box midfield, by the way, very adaptable players. Trent can play anywhere along there up until about this point. And even there, you'd still say he could play a brilliant ball out wide from there, brilliant ball out wide from there, right? Szoboszlai, incredible legs. I think a lot of people are giving him credit for the energy that he brings, but I think what we're also seeing is he's a key hookup player and someone who he's the pass before the pass very often. He's the play before the play. He's the drive before the drive. What they bring on Ryan Gravenberch to do, what they bring on Harvey Elliott to do is very different, right? We'll talk about that in a second. By the way, for that Trent goal, first of all, iconic celebration. That, fantastic. You want to do and stand that in front of the City fans like that, my friend? Brilliant. I could hang that in my home and I would be happy, right? But today he played in Predators. Normally he's with Under Armour. Those are Predators, look. Adidas Predators, old school ones as well. Is this a tribute to David Beckham? Just saying. Or is it just the fact that he's looking for another boot deal and maybe he doesn't get them? If he has an Adidas boot deal, thrilled for him. That's iconic. That is big time. That's different. Let's talk a little bit about Liverpool, how Liverpool changed the game. Now, this is how they ended average position-wise at the end of the game. You could see why they brought on Wataru Endo. This is exactly the kind of position that he would play in Germany. Come in, short. He doesn't necessarily need to shore up the back line in the same way. He's not going to be the same kind of leader. What he's going to do is he's basically going to snuff out any attacks. Did it here in the midfield when he fouled. Was it Doku? Yeah, I think it was Doku. Took the yellow card. Exactly what he's supposed to do. But on Harvey Elliott was literally a body there to help get first of all, put a wall in place, stop Joel Matip taking so much of the heat, and also get in behind Trent so that Trent could bomb forward. Couple of games now where Trent has bombed forward. Talk about that more in a second. And then bringing on Cody Gakpo in a time when Liverpool needed to have someone who was good at bringing the ball forward, carrying the ball, Cody Gakpo, and at the same time have someone who was able to allow Salah to push on a little bit. These two, by the way, driving out of the midfield, allowing these guys basically to drive on and become two wide forwards. You heard me. Takes a lot of the pressure off these fullback positions. Both of these guys very handsy when it comes to playing in these kind of positions. And by the way, let's not underestimate Ryan Gravenberch in this game. The impact, not only did we have Gravenberch over here, but also Gakpo over here, there. Both of them have that silent G because they are both silent Gs. Didn't work, fair enough. The point being, right, both these guys came on to relieve. Both of them are really good at keeping the ball. Both of them are really good at driving forward with it. But Cody Gakpo in particular, very good at winning free kicks. Very good at going down or hooking up with the other players. And just being able to relieve a bit of that pressure on this Liverpool team. Klopp said it during the international break. He's excellent playing anywhere along here. He can play in any one of these three lines almost permanently, though he plays very deep for Liverpool, and he looks comfortable. He looks... I know it's not, and a lot of people are going, oh, well, he's not the goal scorer that we wanted him to be when we first signed him. I think his role's changed a lot. I think he's become a lot more like a midfielder. But what it allowed Liverpool to do, especially with someone like Trent in these wide areas, was bring Trent a little bit more central and then basically drive out of that midfield rather than having to constantly pass, and City just be able to congest it and get the ball away, get the ball back from Liverpool very quickly. It allowed Salah to drive wide here. It allowed these three basically to drive on into these three areas and push City back. If you look at the average positions, you'll probably see that Liverpool basically, all three of these will correspond quite neatly to three of City's centre-backs. 1, 2, 3, right. Overall, I would actually say Liverpool played relatively poorly today. I would say they played quite, not limited football, but there were times where City clearly had taken the shape that Liverpool wanted to play and looked to cancel it out. Foden got in the way of the ball quite a lot. I think Kanji and Ake got in the way of the ball quite a lot. You could clearly see that Liverpool were frustrated because they weren't able to build up in the way that they wanted to build up. It led to a lot slower play. The ball was actually moving a lot slower, which I thought was really weird. And what was really strange about the play today was, again, we've seen this in the last few weeks, Liverpool didn't really wake up until about halfway through the game. I was at the Toulouse game in France with Liverpool, and I remember at the time, especially looking at the way that Trent played in the second half, right? I remember thinking, wow, you are grabbing this team by the scruff of the neck and pulling them up with you. He was basically a right winger in the second half against Toulouse. It was kind of similar with Liverpool. It allowed Salah to push in there. These guys bomb on down there. I mean, you've really got three people who you would think would occupy similar positions, but actually do quite different roles. He's an enabler. He's a driver. He's a possession winner, and he's a goal scorer. 4/5, especially with the driver here in Joel Matip, very different players. What I love is that Liverpool do drive on a lot from this side, and that's partially because they've got Virgil van Dijk, who can basically drop him back here, and because, as I think a lot of people have said more recently, he looks close to back to his best, if not a Virgil van Dijk 3.0, as I've now just coined at Liverpool. I think what it allows people to do, like Trent, is to be that Stevie G type character, grab the game by the scruff of the neck, bring Liverpool back into it, give the opposition something to worry about, have that commanding performance. He looks massive when he's confident, you saw it again, by the way. I think a lot of people are going to say Jeremy Doku had a really good game. He did. There were a few times where Trent was off his feet. There were times where Trent was getting crossed over. There were times where Doku was going past players. I think in this kind of game, we saw it a couple of seasons ago when I went to the Etihad with Liverpool, and it was the Champions League, I think. Or was that at Anfield? It was one or the other. I went to both games. Both legs of that one where we beat City very conclusively and went through. That was the season where we lost to Real Madrid in the final, the first Champions League run, right? Stephen Tries. And Cal Freezy, weirdly. Anyway, the point is, in that game, he had to lock down, I think it was Sane. And there was this real question mark. There was a real can he do it? And I remember at the time thinking, he's got the ability, but it's not can, it's... I mean, but it's will. And I feel like there's a different will about Trent Alexander-Arnold, not only as vice-captain. I think he's always been one of those captain-type leaders for Liverpool. But when you look at what he brings, when you look at what he means to this team in terms of the actual relief on the ball, driving forward, progression, the multiple different roles that he's able to play. Like, look at him there. He's still a defensive midfielder there, even if he is a midfielder. He's still someone who's offering a lot of protection to Joel Matip. If it wasn't Trent, and you basically take away the Trent Alexander-Arnold name and everything else, and you basically go, okay, that's a very solid right-back performance there, I think a lot of people would be much happier. But the point is, he has these leader-like performances that I think Liverpool really capitalise on. And a lot of the players around him react to it really well. You see other players getting a lot more space because Trent, first of all, is making loads of room because he drives basically into this area. It makes a lot of room over here, which obviously he then exploited in this game, but there was plenty of space for other people to do the same. And then at the same time, you also see just the overall team go, oh, he's driving forward, he's doing something. It's very Gerrard-esque. The only real weakness that I think Liverpool are exhibiting at the moment is, there are two weaknesses, right? Or what I would perceive as weaknesses. These are the average positions. Obviously, the key people have been subbed off at this point. When you look at the two differences between this midfield, which is quite congested there, that's actually really narrow for this Liverpool side. Normally, you see maybe Szoboszlai over here, Salah probably there, but also there, which means his average position is here. And then at the same time, Jota maybe could be a little bit more progressed. Normally, you might see this position being more like there, and you might see him. Actually, that's relatively normal for Jones at this point. But in this kind of game, you just want to see a little bit more symmetry and possibly just someone else there just to give Liverpool a bit of an out. Anyway, the point is, there's a weakness here. I think a lot of people are criticising Andy Robertson for not being able to take up that position. I think it's probably one of the hardest positions to play in this Liverpool team, right? You are asked to shuttle so much up and down this side. I think it just becomes, it's exhausting. And at the moment, Liverpool don't have any relief on that side for someone like a Tsimikas. I don't think he has the fitness. I think there are times where it's quite clear that he isn't quite in the right position. He kind of lets the game come to him sometimes, which can be quite frustrating, whereas sometimes you get the feeling that Andy Robertson feels a bit more engaged with the game, though I understand Tsimikas is obviously a very good player. I'm just saying, I'm not saying I doubt him, I don't like him, it's not that. I think he's a very good player. I just think in this role, it's such a hard role to play for Liverpool. And it's something that Andy Robertson had made his own at left back, but now it's like a left centre back come left back type position, especially in having support from someone like Jota, who is very good, but at the same time, there are so many different elements for him to play. You have to be quite reactive. It's basically a reactive position to what he's doing and what he's doing. And sometimes you'll need to be further forward here, and sometimes you'll need to be slightly further back because he's got taken over here. And there's times where I just think, is Tsimikas able to read the game in that way? Secondly, Liverpool's midfield. This was obviously the absolute gap that you saw McAllister vacate in the second half, right? Weirdly, they dropped Endo in there, which I love. I think that's hilarious that his average position is there. It's probably more like there or there, but you get my point. There's something happening where Liverpool don't have a 6 at the moment, and I don't think that means they go to get a 6. What I think they need is a player like an Andre, possibly, in the Andre mould, where with the adaptability, with the change in shape, the fluidity of this Liverpool side, normally, obviously, you'd love to see him drop a little bit deeper. He's not a midfielder, so you don't want to see him defending too much, though there are often games where he's kind of here. At this point, Liverpool were going to basically make a back five. That's a back five there. Trent was way more progressed, right? And I guess what I'm saying is they had to make that back five, which really makes him too key for Liverpool. If you had someone else who could drop in there, and I get it, Endo's a good player at the very specific things that he does, but it's not saying he's a bad player to want to bring in another kind of player. It's not that you're bad, it's that I know, or I feel like I know, obviously don't know, the profile of player that would come slot in, just facilitate a bit more for Liverpool. I'm not sure that Endo is quite the facilitating factor that Liverpool can thrive and get to their very maximum with right now. And that's kind of my point, is like McAllister's not a 6. Endo is a 6, but was not used as such, although it was actually used as a very kind of crude centre-back kind of 6-way here. He's not quite as expansive as we need him to be, and McAllister's not quite as locked down as we need him to be. So there's this kind of balance that I think Liverpool aren't managing quite to strike by rotating between all these players in these different roles. There's times where, if I go to the average positions here, you will see any one of these guys dropping deep, A, to receive the ball, which is what City acknowledged and tried to shut off. They shut off McAllister receiving the ball quite often. Liverpool were trying to get City to press and couldn't very often sort of trigger and pull them out. And that was often because these guys were not in the position they needed to be or were struggling. City, what often they would do was push a little bit forward, but then drop someone like Bernardo Silva, who's very good at winning the ball back, a little bit deeper, and he would stop one of these three guys in that rotation of players that seems to just go round and round and round, right? And in the end, you get to a point where Liverpool is really frustrated. They find it hard to play out. The system breaks down. Nunez starts to get frustrated. Salah starts to get frustrated, or starts to drop a little bit deeper, wants to receive the ball. Naturally, it's not great for him to have to do that. You want him on that out route as often as possible. You could see before the game, there were a couple of things that I noticed. You saw Szoboszlai basically saying to Nunez, don't turn around, keep running, right? And obviously that was a brief that Klopp had given to them early on, right? And then at the same time, post-game, loved the passion from Nunez. Loved that he was going at Pep Guardiola. Loved that he went over to the City fans and was pulling the badge, kissing it and posing next to it. These are the kind of things you want from a young guy like that. You want someone who's committed to the team, someone who's believed in him and someone who's returned that belief. I love it. Did Liverpool deserve to win the game? I don't think so based on this performance. But keeping City within arm's length, within touching distance, even if Arsenal go top this weekend, is really key to the way that Liverpool move forward. Just keeping this title race close. People are always going to stumble. People are always going to trip. Taking points off City is the key. And with Liverpool being so close, bear in mind, they'd actually be ahead of City at this point if they'd have won that Spurs game. And if they'd have been given anything in that Spurs game, they'd be level on points if they'd have even drawn that Spurs game. So just bear that in mind. Do I think City deserve to win? With stats like this, no. But I think what they showed, and the eye test showed, they were not even more willing, like just a lot more overt in the way that they managed to get at Liverpool's goal. Haaland seemed to be enjoying himself, though very often he seems to be anyway. I don't really think that's an indication of whether he played well or badly. And overall, I actually think they looked the more dangerous in a traditional sense, but actually it was Liverpool's finishing, the fact they didn't quite get their shape right up front, and City just got that shape right up front, and the two fullbacks for Liverpool weren't quite as defensive or weren't quite as solid defensively as they needed to be. I think they were trying to be defensive. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll be interested to hear your guys' thoughts, ruminations on the game. Interesting to throw Curtis Jones back into the mix very early on. I thought it was good in this game. Again, Alexis is not a 6, or not the 6 that Liverpool need. Szoboszlai showing great energy, but again, kind of not quite on it in this game. Got a little bit lost in that midfield, and really the midfield got lost. Overall, man of the match for me, probably Salah. Though I do think Trent redeemed himself or kind of brought himself up in the second half. There were lots of positives. I think it really showed, and this is kind of a bit of an easy escape for Liverpool. Liverpool aren't quite at the point where they are competing level to level with City, but I don't think that means that they're not in the running and that there isn't a higher trajectory for this Liverpool team. I'll be really interested to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again soon right here on the Lawrence McKenna channel. Do not forget, we are launching a Liverpool channel very soon. We're at 3K subs. Maybe if we can get a little bit further. Hold on, wait. And over on the channel, I've been given by Nike Football a series of Liverpool football kits to give away. These are the XL ones. I've got smalls, mediums, larges on the way actually, but these are the XL kits. These are, I think, the fan edition. Really nice kit. I'm going to be giving these away over on the Liverpool channel. So if you would like one, head over there, hit subscribe. And I'll be giving them away on my Instagram as well. Message me on there. Let me know what you think of the channel. If you could share it, that would be fantastic. And I will chat to you guys again in a little while. Much love. Bye!